The Chronicles. Welcome to the first ever potcast, if you will, of the Chronicles. This is episode 1. My name's Chris, and I'll be your Chronicles host. As we're going to go into all things cannabis, kind of cover all the cannabis bases in this podcast. And with this first episode, we're kind of going in on the status of adult use cannabis on Guam. How far away are we from cannabis being truly legal? And joining me today, got my good friend Wil Parkinson of the Cannabis Control Board. Of course, champ Melchor Manibusan, who's been really a cannabis activist since way back. You know what I mean? Just based on the amount of weed this guy has smoked in his life, he deserves to be on this first episode.
Thank you.
And then the man, the myth, the legend, the senator who brought you adult use cannabis on Guam, Senator Clynt Ridgell.
We're not worthy.
And so we wanted to kind of just jump right into it and talk about the rules and regs for adult use cannabis. Senator, we'll get, I guess, the Cannabis Control Board perspective first, because I know there was it took a long time. I know Mel had some issues with that, right? Mel, your take was, why did Saipan do it way before us?
Yeah, so you know what I mean? Like, I get it, there's stuff that has to be done and to be written out. But, last year, the whole cannabis industry made $40 billion last year. Saipan, about a year or 2 years ago, they're growing, they're drying, they're dispensing. Now, my thing is like, what's taking us so long? I mean, I'm not saying anything about Saipan, but I feel that we should be the leader in this. And right now, Saipan is already doing all of that, the whole entire process. So what's taking us so long? But anyways, I'm just asking for a friend. Asking for a friend.
First off, we can start with the good news. Rules are done and it's off to the legislature.
Wait, not yet. It's at the AG's office.
At the AG's office.
Man.
So once the AG is done reviewing it, then it'll go to the legislature. Then the good news with that is once the legislature receives it, then the clock starts ticking 90 days or else it lapses into effect. Yeah. So if the legislature does nothing for 90 days, it'll automatically lapse within 90 days. So at least there's a clock that will start and it'll automatically be implemented.
Yeah.
The Cannabis Control Board, Wil Parkinson here, he was like our inside man. I want to say, like, you're the only stoner on the board.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'd probably,
Because they look like a pretty straight bunch, you know what I mean? When you look at who's on the board.
Well, kudos to our government of Guam. Everybody on that board is extremely professional. Yes. And except for me, I'm kind of like the everyman. And then there's this guy, right? No, but I was the patient representative, so I'm kind of the everyman. I'm the one who asks the obvious layman questions to everyone, and I represent one perspective of many that's on the board. But to credit the government of Guam, all the people on the board have been incredibly professional, incredibly on top of it. It's just we have been a victim of circumstances, and it is what it is. It sucks, and it's been one of the big heartaches of my life to not get these rules done by our mandated time.
Yeah.
But I mean, during critical components of the drafting process, COVID happened. Before COVID, we were gonna slide in at the finish line, but we were gonna slide in right on time. We were on pace to get it done. But when COVID happened, people like Denorsi and Daphne Shimizu were called to the front lines to be doing important work. And I mean, those people aren't dead weight on our board. They really carried their weight. And so when they were missing, we were missing their input. And day one, I tried to make it a goal to like, hey, this thing's happening. We could still finish this on time by doing it, but how do I call away Linda Denorsi and Daphne Shimizu from Rev Tax and Public Health to be on the board?
And then Linda retired, and so then they had to put another person in her place representing Department of Public Health. Yeah. And
Senator,
I think
that's fine, right? But check this out. I'm just asking for a friend right now.
Yeah, sure.
Even at that, even if it's the Corona or the Zoom meetings and everyone's busy, I get that. But yet still 4 years. Why do you think? And just in your between us girls, I mean, no one needs to know. Between us girls, why do you think it took so long? Or what could you have done to speed it up? Maybe like 2-3 years ago. What do you think?
Yeah, well, what could you have done?
We're gonna have
if you were the boss, you're like, hey guys, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna pull the trigger in 2 weeks. I mean, okay, how that much? 300 papers, 220 papers? How big is the law and the board? Like, how would it?
But I think where Mel's coming from is that at the beginning of this whole process, everyone kind of was like, oh, we're just going to copy paste the rules from
California or
Arizona
Colorado or
so
whatever.
people got it in their mind like, oh, if it's just a copy paste, then it should just be wham bam, you know.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case.
That's the thing, it wasn't copy and paste. Yeah. I personally think part of the thing that dragged it out a little bit and maybe took a little longer is the board was made up of more people than my bill originally intended. Okay. I think my bill was only supposed to be like 5 members or something. Right. It's easier sometimes with less members to get things done, right? You know, number one, you have a less amount of people for a quorum, right? So if you got more members, you got to make sure more guys show up to get the quorum. And you just have more, too many cooks spoil the meal, so to speak. So during the legislative process, other senators said they wanted to add all these different agency heads to the board. And I was kind of like, whoa, the board's getting kind of big now. Right. You have a lot of people, not only that, you're having a lot of agency heads, which I get it, they want their input. But a lot of these agency heads maybe aren't very familiar with cannabis at all. So it was very educational for a lot. They had to go do a lot of research.
A lot of OJT.
They added a lot of people to the board there were agency heads that were required to be on there. Like there was GPD was required to be on the board, which doesn't really make sense because GPDs should no longer really be involved in it because it's now legal. So what is their involvement? But they're looking, I guess, from a public safety aspect. They wanted their input. But to be honest, nothing against GPD, but they're not. This is not necessarily their expertise. So some of the issues and questions brought up by the representative from GPD, I sat in some of the meetings, and some of the questions and issues brought up by members of GPD and other agencies weren't always very pertinent to what they're actually trying to get done. It was kind of like they were getting sidetracked a lot. Like people throw out like, well, what about this? And it was kind of like, well, that's not really pertains to what you guys are trying to do. So there's a lot of sidetracking, I think, that happened from members of the board who weren't very well versed on it. They had a lot of questions too. They would ask questions. Will would do his best to answer it, but again, he's one guy and there's a lot of people that had a lot of different questions about it.
But okay, so as long as it took the version of the rules and regs that are at the AG's office and then heading to the legislature, do you think that they're pretty much good to go, or what do you anticipate, Senator? Do you think, because there's a bunch of different options for you guys?
My understanding is that, so what happened was they finished it actually several months back, gave it to the AG. The AG took a long time with reviewing it because they really wanted to do a thorough review. They sent it back like marked up, like fix this, fix that, fix all these recommendations. My understanding, correct me if I'm mistaken, Will, but my understanding is that the board basically just adopted the recommendations by the AG. So it should be, the AG right now is just looking to make sure, did they adopt all our recommendations? What exactly did they do? And then they should sign off on it and send it to the legislature.
A lot of the recommendations by the AG didn't change the spirit of any particular rule, or it was more just, we need clarification on what this means. What is this? What is this referring to? What subsection is? Just tidying up legalese. Nothing was fundamentally changed.
Like content-wise.
Yeah, content-wise, it was just, we need clarification here, 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 and here. And so when the meeting to approve the changes came, it was a 5-minute meeting. Just,
And so what now? Now that it's at the AGs, it goes to the legislature. There's a bunch of different ways that you guys can handle this, right?
Yeah, well, once it gets to the legislature, one of the requirements is a public hearing has to be held on the proposed rules and regulations. And then it's up to the legislature if we want to amend them, if we want to just adopt them as is, or reject them, or they can lapse into effect. So those are the options.
So what do you think, though, with this public hearing process? I can just anticipate some people thinking that this is a do-over and they get to come in and say, oh, I don't want cannabis here, or I don't want this or that, or I want to change.
Some people might try to, they might say change the rules. And that's what they're allowed to do. They're allowed to show up to the hearing and say, this is what I don't like about the rules, or this is what I like about the rules, or whatever. And then it's up to the legislature to decide, do we change them or do we keep them as is, or, what do we do?
So what do you think, though, when you stick your political finger in the air?
I can't tell. Honestly. I will say this legislature is a little bit different because I think there's a lot more members of this current legislature that aren't for legalization. Some of them have publicly said it in the past. So there's new members of the legislature who aren't in support of legalization of cannabis, and they've publicly said this. So.
Right. So I know Senator Joanne Brown is one. Are there other Republicans or any Democrats?
Well, there's some on the legislature that voted no on the bill in the first place. So,
okay.
I mean, I can think about it. I can list all of them if you guys really want to go down this. Really, right now, there's only 5 members of the legislature still in the legislature who voted yes on it.
Wow.
The others didn't run again or didn't make it back in.
Wow. Interesting. So what are we going to be able to see, Will, when these... Well, I don't think it really makes sense to talk about what could happen with this version of the rules of res, because they could still change at the legislative level. So let's talk about this weed right here.
Yeah, let's do that. What do we got here?
Champ,
'Cause
what do
this
we got?
looks beautiful.
All right, we got some. Can you pass me that Songi Bros
Yeah.
right there? These guys always hook it up. You know what I mean? So you got a nice fatty 6-gram nugget, 7-gram nugget from Songi Bros, and it's triangle mint. And one of my favorites over here is these boys over here down at the Marianas Grown. They got some Ring of Fire and some cookie mints. So these guys always been supporting me. So when we first started this, since the pandemic started, we've been tasting and sampling different types of bud, and they're pheno hunting, so they're always giving me some stuff to taste. But these guys always have fire. They're always hooking it up, man.
Talk to us about the strains, because I remember when we were coming up back when it was illegal, right? When we had to, hide in the dark, the cannabis closet, so to speak. There was just like, you had the homies and then you had the green bud.
Well, homies are homies. Homies is just whatever. Anytime you have homegrown weed, it's just called homies. But I think, back then, what I used to smoke 20 years ago is a lot of OG strains, and it's so hard to find really good pure OG strains. Everyone says you have an OG strain, whether it's a sativa, indica, or hybrid, doesn't matter, or ruderatus, but it's just those original OG strains. So 10 years ago in California, those guys been breeding a lot lately. So they're taking all these old school strains and they're breeding it so they can create their own particular strain, and they can name and copyright and trademark it and so forth, and brand it and make some money. But I'm an old school smoker. I love the new school strains. I mean, they taste sweet. There's a lot of terps in it. Strong, more THC content, but I'm just an old soul, man. Sometimes, you know what I mean? People like to drink their Bud Light and their Heineken, and, people like their craft beer. I like to go back, too, to just smoke something like an original skunk, an original kush, an original blueberry. But it's so hard to find them. When people told me, hey, Melchor, try this, I got an OG, and I tried this, like, bro, stop. You know what I mean? You got that seed like 3 years ago.
This ain't no OG.
You know, ain't no OG.
Coming from
but
an OG.
So but now, you got the new growers, right? The new school growers. A lot of these guys are young. I've been traveling out to the States and into Europe, and I'm checking all the growers. Everyone is under 30, under 25. And they're already all putting in 2 to 5 years in the industry. So these guys, I would say kids, because I can be their dad. We can all be their daddy. but they're educated, and they've been in the system and growing at 200 to 500 lights per grow up. So I mean, these guys they're not just growing craft cannabis. It's like borderline commercial ready, and they're constantly harvesting every week, every 2 weeks, right? So pulling and poundage. So, but when you talk to them, man, they're all kids, and they've been in the game, and they found a way where they can go and they can have a legit job, get paid, supply, take care of support their family by doing just cannabis. But in the cannabis game, there's a lot, man. You got the growers, you got the dryers, you got the processors, you got the dispensary, you got everyone else around it. Like some guys are just getting into the distribution side of it, or the agriculture side of it, the pottings, the soil, the different types of soil, the mediums, the nutrients, and these are all just total different departments. And you got major corporations that are getting into this game right now, and they have nothing to do with cannabis. The last 25, 40 years, they're only growing strawberries, but all of a sudden they see that cannabis is the new green rush, and it's the future. $40 billion last year, 2020. So you can't tell me. I know you're in the board. I love you, my brother. We love to disagree with me. You're always getting mad at me on TV. But my bro, it don't take no 4 years to write no law. Stop it. You guys knock it off, bro. Come on.
It didn't take us
come on,
4
6 years.
Well, okay, guys. So
knock it off.
let's get into this weed, but also I want to ask. So the what you just talked about, all the jobs, the money. Like, do you see that in Guam's future?
Absolutely, man. It's happening already, right? You look at like an old ERC, for example, been doing it for like the past 10 years, just selling, whether it's just nutrients and soil, right? That's part of the game. Even if it's for small growers or micro growers, they've been doing it ever since, right? And there's a lot of money to be, you know, whether it's electricians, plumbers, you know, because this, when you're running a major op, like a 5,000 or 10,000 square foot, I mean, you want professional plumbing. You know, you're not going to try to have me go in and just try to, you know, put some pipes together, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now when you're talking about 100 to 250 lights, you know, pulling whatever, if it's 640 watts to 1,050 watts off the wall, you know, that's some amperage right there. So you're going to need a real professional electrician, right? So I think there's going to be money all around to be made with this whole game. And, you know, it's going to provide a lot of jobs, you know, tourism, you got Japan, Korea, Russia, Taiwan, Hong Kong. Let's just say even at a minimum 1 million users, we don't got enough room for those guys to come when they come to Guam. And there's going to be impossible. If we had even 10 grow ops at 10,000 square foot, we're not going to have enough weed.
Could I interrupt? Thank you for
yeah.
saying that, Mel. Could you talk about that a little more? Because there was a lot of pushback from some people in the tourism
gonna say.
industry.
Of course, man, because they're not in the game. They're into the alcohol and their own hotels.
You've been to a lot of our source markets, and you can vouch and say there's a lot of cannabis users in those markets,
Absolutely.
right?
So I was
that's all
also,
I've been
I
saying.
did this thing for the Rotary, and they asked me, hey, Malcolm, do you think that making cannabis legal in Guam is going to like deter, chase people away and not want to come to Guam? Well, I've been in the tourism industry for about 15, 20 years now. And if you take the last 15 years, you're going to get an average of 50 to 80 years old will come to Guam. They would travel to Guam. And I would say on an average, they're spending $100 to $500 a day. Now, I'm just taking that based on our business at Hamamoto Gardens, right? Now, in this last 5 years, that demographic has dropped. You ain't got no 60 to say 80-year-old people coming to Guam and dropping $300 a day. No, that already changed. One, they're not traveling, and two, they're not spending that money. The Japan economy is it's not bumping like it used to be. So I feel that if they're gonna, even if we don't have cannabis, they're not coming. But even if there's cannabis, I guarantee you that they're gonna want to come and medicate, even if it's for 3 days, 1 week, you know. So that's gonna make everyone money. And you got the housing, you got the restaurants, you have the rent-a-cars, so they're gonna make money, right? And so I feel that when it becomes legal and tourists can actually come to Guam and they cut this whole vaccine and your COVID test, bro, when they come to Guam, we're gonna still get from 21 to 80, guarantee. You know, users are not. Now, families are going to come to Guam because us four are going to want to come to Guam and party, but we're going to bring our families. They're not going to want to party or smoke, and they're just going to want to do beach stuff and whatever. So everyone's going to win, you know what I mean? And I that's just my opinion, but I've been in the industry for a long time, and I'm speaking on my experience, and these are my opinions and my experiences.
But the old heads, the old tourism heads, I mean, they would just hate on everything you just said, and to them, it's like all or
That's
nothing.
fine.
You know what I mean? They're saying like, oh, if they even see a green cross or a weed leaf sign, like they're going to pack up and turn right around at the airport. I mean, that's the way they make it sound.
Well,
I'm gonna make a bold prediction.
Well, when
here.
you're in the business of killing other people's business, right? If you're in the alcohol industry, I mean, I love all my alcoholic friends, but you don't want cannabis because we're going to take away from your alcohol sales. All the cigarette companies that provide cancer to everyone, you're not going to like cannabis growers because we're going to take away that profit. So, I mean, you know what? I love everyone, but you're gonna listen to all of this. And you're gonna say, Melchor, whoa, let's say, but I'm being honest, right? If you're in the alcohol industry and the tobacco industry, you're not gonna like the people in the cannabis industry, and I don't care. I'm down for cannabis. I don't really care for alcohol, and I don't smoke tobacco. You know what I mean? So
when we legalize cannabis for personal use, we hit all-time highs in tourism. And I predict that once the tourism market opens up and we have dispensaries, here's my bold prediction, we will once again hit all-time highs.
Yeah, but Will, I mean, did we hit all-time highs?
Hear me now, quote me later.
Because our tourism was already rocking and we just happened to make weed legal at the time? Because I don't think people were like, oh, they made weed legal in Guam, let's go. I mean, it was kind of just like a happy coincidence.
But to his point, if it really were to scare people, then they should have been like, oh no, they just legalized it. It's all over the news. Don't go there. It didn't happen.
It didn't.
They kept coming.
And like it didn't stop at one bit. We still hit all-time highs.
What do you think of this weed? Which one are you smoking?
I am doing the Songi.
Songi Bros. Look at that.
Songi Bros. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that.
Fire.
Isn't she lovely?
And this is Songi Bros. Triangle Mints B times 1. What is that? This is like algebra.
I don't know. It's definitely a cross, but I don't know the cross right there. But
I want to see them start naming this like, like Daddy Do Dank.
so this strain here, this from Songy Bros is grown in Purity.
Afami Afghan.
If you can name a
Back Road
strain,
Boogie.
what would you name it?
Back Road Boogie.
Back Road Boogie.
I mean, yeah, that's, you know what I mean? Like, it could be Triangle Mints B1 or whatever, but I want to start, like you said, Mel, OG, and you were talking about the OG strains, like the AK-47s and the, but I'm talking about, like, the ones that, our uncles used to have, bro. Those, like,
The California,
kind of
Palau, the Palau.
Right.
And so that's another thing, right? So I was asking some of my friends in Palau, hey, can you guys have any seeds? They're like, oh man, we don't have any more. And it's so sad because I remember, back in the 90s, the Palau bud from Peleliu in particular,
Right.
not the one from Kroarai. I'm saying strictly the Palau Island and Peleliu Island. They had this really green sativa bud, and it was so you get so stoned.
Yeah.
Your face is numb, but you're able to do stuff. You know what I mean? It's not, but you're
You
like
have
really,
to.
really stoned. You're very active. So, but man, that bud was so good. And back in the day, I guess the DA was to fly over and spread this powder to kill all the plants.
Oh, wow.
And now, like, well, I mean, that's the word on the street, right? But
That
now
hurts
it's,
my feelings.
That's probably what made it
like,
chronic.
to find some original Palau, man,
Yeah.
if you can get, I'll pay $1,000 for that seed.
So when I went to Palau, but I'm telling you guys, Yap has really good weed.
Really?
Really?
I went to Yap and I met this dude here in Guam. He worked over at the Fisherman's Co-op, and then I was telling him, I was like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna go to Yap, and he's like, oh man, that's where So he goes, when are you going? And this is like a couple months before I even went, and I was like, I think I'm going like November or whatever. And he's like, okay, my uncle will meet you, and I didn't even think anything of it. So then a couple months later, I flew out. I got to the hotel, and there was this old guy sitting in the parking lot, and he had the tailgate down, and he just like all these branches of like. And when I got closer, bro, it was like chunky nugs, dude.
Nice.
It was the old school.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like Sativa Island
Yeah.
with long season. When I went to Palau, I just got a bunch of joints, and this is when it was still illegal on Guam. And so I don't know if you guys ever did this when you get a fatty, you're like, dude, you could re-roll that. And so these Palau joints, they were like so compact.
So compressed, yeah.
That you could roll like 4 joints
Yeah,
out on
absolutely,
one.
yeah.
So anyway, I was smoking and it was like everywhere I get, it was like the same weed. It was good, but that good sativa.
Really?
And so I asked somebody, I said, hey, where do you get like a different kind of weed? And they're like, oh, we got to go to Peleliu, right? So we went to one on the boat to Peleliu, got all the way to Peleliu. And it took me to this lady. The lady gave me the weed, and I lit it up and I smoked it. It was the exact same weed that I smoked everywhere else, but just a little fresher.
Yeah.
So they're all like, that Peleliu weed is everywhere, and it's good. Like, you're right, you get that, like, you're definitely elevated, but like, especially if you're in Palau, you're going to be doing a lot of swimming, a lot of, fishing, a lot of active stuff, so you can still do that. Because some of this weed now,
Functional.
like, this heavy weed,
Well, the
it'll just put
indica,
you
right?
out.
So now the hybrids and indicas are, they're pretty intense. Even for myself, but anyways, whenever you smoke, you can only get so high. Your THC receptors only get you so high. You gotta like take it to the next level with dabs or edibles, which I'm scared of edibles. You know what I mean? I just pinch at that bad boy. But one thing for sure, Barnett, back in the day, what I do know, I mean, whatever. But for the most part, is all that outdoor bud was organic and natural. You know what I mean? Nowadays, people are trying to get that really big nug, and they want commercial, they want poundage so they can make more money and have more stash.
Right.
And they're down to put freaking whatever in there. I'm so sorry. I'm not allowed to cuss. Oh man. But anyways, we had a really good one, and they told us to rechange this show because Mr. Parkinson's here. We had a blast, and Uncle Melchor was just letting his mouth
He was
go. But
letting the
anyways, I
bombs
love
fly.
it. I love it.
Hey, but let me just talk about this weed I'm smoking here. I'm smoking this. This is from
Mariana's grown.
Mariana's Grown. These guys got these cool, like, every time I see a jar like this, I think Denancy.
But please notice the back. Show the camera the back.
Sample, not for resale.
It's not for resale.
So when I get this, when I post this stuff on like my Instagram, people will message me. It's funny
All
because
the
people be
time.
like, hey, where can I buy that?
All the time.
Yeah, it's not
And,
for sale yet.
Right.
Yeah,
and so it's
man.
not for sale, but this one is Cookie Mints #1. And this one, it's like airy. I definitely taste some like cookie. It's like tastes like cookie crumbs. But it's a kind of a, what is this? Is this like a,
It's a
Hybrid?
That's definitely a hybrid.
yeah, so, but it feels more like more of an alert high.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wouldn't know too much about this strain. It's actually It's one of their new.
Yeah, that's the
phenotypes,
thing with
so-
the new strains. You don't know, right?
Well, the
So-
grower too is always they're just sampling it. Right?
Yeah.
So this is it's just a.
But I mean, the idea is if you
sample
take one killer weed and then you take another killer weed and you make them like
Yeah.
have sex and have a baby, then you end up with a
have a
killer
baby
killer
weed.
Yeah.
The weed, the son of
Yeah.
two, or daughter of two killers.
So these guys are
Check
just
this out,
crossing
check
all
this out,
these
boss.
crazy
So this one here is
strains.
what I'm smoking. I'm smoking the Ring of Fire, and so it's basically this genetics is from Hawaii. So Hawaii and Guam is kind of like the ring, the
Right.
two
Ring of
opposite
Fire?
ends,
Yeah.
the Ring of Fire. So it's a really good strain. It's called Guava Lava. That's by marianas grown. So these guys been always during the first lockdown, first lockdown. They hit me up and they gave me a sample and they gave me a massive nug of hash, which is that's my favorite.
Yeah.
And that's where all of this started. You know what I mean? Everyone started giving me bud just to sample all their
Nice.
stuff, and it's really good to see the local micro growers coming out and producing high-end flower. Now, again, I'm going to speak on my experience. I've been to Amsterdam 10 times, Vancouver 4, I've been to Israel, Palestine, all over Europe.
Yeah.
So I was strain hunting before strain hunting was a thing, and I was just doing it because I like good weed. And as a kid, the doctors, and I broke my neck in 1989, and doctors since then always want to give me surgery and steroids. And I always found that cannabis was like, yeah, it's a Band-Aid, but it's my Band-Aid, and it helped me for that amount of time that I needed it. So I used to try to travel and train and train everywhere and, sample the different weed they had and what works best for me, right? And so anyways, these guys have really good flower. So comparing the weed to Amsterdam and Europe and California, these last 3 trips to California this last year, I was, they look nice, but I wasn't wowed. And I come to Guam and I look at the homeboys growing stuff like this, and this is top shelf in California.
Yeah.
I mean, hands down, bro, it is. And it's not because they're my friends and they're giving me free weed. I'm just trying to say, Guam boys can comp with all the growers out there. Period. It's just it is what it is. The only reason why they're doing it bigger because they had the license, because this guy took too long to make it happen for us. But because of you, we're able to do this. But he's taking long.
Credit where credit is due.
I have a question. I have a question, Senator. If you had someone building your house, let's just say someone's going to build your house. You gave a contractor and you say, hey, contractor, I need you to this is what I want to build. And they took 4 years to give your blueprints. Would you hire it? Keep that guy as your architect or your contractor? I'm just joking. I love
We're doing okay though, man. Look, we're smoking the best weed.
I'm a volunteer. I'm not even hired.
Absolutely. That's
right.
But here, I want you to try this one out. Try this one. This is the boss. Try this
Yeah, I
one.
think that's another thing that people don't realize. The board members are all either volunteers or
Yes.
they currently work for
I appreciate you guys.
their agency heads and things. So anytime they put in on the Cannabis Control Board is not really, they're not hired for the Cannabis
I got
Control
you.
Board. Because
I
I've
got
seen
you.
some people complain about everyone who's on the Cannabis Control Board, they're collecting a fat check for nothing. And I'm like, they're not collecting any money.
No, yeah.
You guys are getting paid?
Yeah, like Wil's example, he's a private sector individual. He doesn't get paid at all. He just shows up to the board
Yeah, I
meetings
do it for the love.
as a patient advocate, right? Because
Yeah.
the board required one member to be an actual medical patient, and you actually have your medical card, right? You're registered.
I don't have a card, but I have
you were
yeah.
registered as a medical
Yes, I am.
patient under the medical program on Guam, right?
Yes. Yep. And that's actually how I qualified. They took
To be
my
on the
name.
board.
They took my name out of a list of
Medical
patients.
patients.
Right.
And I answered the call.
Right. So let's just, we were talking about this before we started recording, but it's interesting that, and I don't know how they handle it in states where cannabis has been legal, but like, for example, the government of Guam, entry into employment at the government of Guam, you got to take a drug test. And if you test positive for cannabis,
Oh,
you won't get
great,
hired.
The great ironies, right?
Yeah. So how do you know, Senator, how they handle that in Colorado or any, is it kind of like, by position or type of
So I think just overall, that has been a challenge across the nation with how to deal with employment. So what my understanding is, a lot of the private sector started doing in the States a lot, and I think it's starting to happen here too, is just not test for cannabis. And instead and which is what I was sort of preaching all along. I'll give you an example, do you test your employees if they drink alcohol before they get hired?
Right.
No, but they might like to drink a lot, but you wouldn't know until they show up to work and their work suffers. So the guy shows up to work drunk and, he breaks something because he's drunk. then you would say, hey, are you drunk? Let me test you for alcohol.
Right, or
And
so
now
let's
you have
say-
now you've got an alcohol. Now you deal with it that way.
Or one
So-
of your employees, you find him asleep in the break room with a tub of ice cream like this. Test this guy for cannabis right now.
Then you might test them. Then you might test them for cannabis.
He's
So
got like a tomato schizo on the side.
I think that's the way it's gonna go. Now it has been a challenge because, as you know, the way the testing works is it basically, even if you smoked a joint, like for some people can stay in the system for a month,
Right.
but just because
Up
it's
to
in the
90
system
days.
and it's
Right.
flagged by a test doesn't mean they're high for a month.
Right.
They were high for like 2 hours at max, right?
yeah.
That's
But
max, right?
it stays in your
But
system.
If it
it
tests
stays in the
positive, it doesn't
system
mean
and it
you're
shows
high.
positive, but they're sober. So they could be completely sober at work and still test positive because they smoked over the weekend or something.
Right.
Makes no
That's where the
difference.
problem is with the testing, the way the testing works. I think two things will happen. I think the testing will be improved to the point where they're able to test more levels wise, and they might be able to determine how recently you smoked. So like maybe if you smoked that morning, they'd be able to test it
Right,
like, oh
yeah,
no,
yeah,
you
yeah.
came into work stoned, you
Right,
smoked that
yeah,
morning.
yeah, yeah.
And the other thing too is I think ultimately employers are just going to start evaluating their employees on their performance, which is how it should be. So if the employee's messing up because he's stoned at work all the time, that's where the employer should step in and say, hey, I think you got a problem because you forgot these things or whatever, and we think you have a problem. You're probably showing up to work stoned all the
Right,
time.
right,
Now
yeah.
we're going to test you. Now we're going to deal with it.
And I mean, to advocate for just the common man here, I mean, as a patient, I know I'd like to dispel the myth that, you know, being on this medicine that you use is as debilitating and making people non-functional. That's just not the case.
Yeah, but I mean, if you can't drink alcohol on the job, then
No,
you
no,
can't-
I'm
you can't smoke. You can't be high on the
no.
job.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating.
Don't make me sound like the grown-up.
No,
here.
I'm not. No, I'm not advocating for you to get drunk on the
But you ever
job.
tried working?
But
stoned?
I mean, people on cannabis are not screwed up. They're just people like you and me,
Yeah.
regular people. And I mean, they're choosing
Depends on the
regular
dosage.
people?
Depends on the dosage.
yeah. Well, they're just using. For some people, it's an outlet. You know, it's
Yeah.
a safe outlet for them to relax.
Even Republicans smoke it.
Even Republicans smoke it. In the deep, dark recesses of their cigar room, they be lighting a doobie up every now and then.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So good talk, guys.
So I have a question. So one of the things, just again asking this, my phone is asking for a friend. So right now, what do you think? So there is 10,000 square foot as a grow, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I got a grow at 10,000 square foot, is that 10,000 square foot canopy, or what if my warehouse is 10,000 square foot at 40 feet? So can I go vertical? Can I have multiple? Because that would allow me to increase my yield. Now,
No, my understanding is that it's just so if it's your floor space, right?
Okay.
So if your floor space is 10,000 on the bottom floor,
Yeah.
you've used up all your space.
That's it.
But now you can do like if you have 5,000 on the bottom floor and you want to do a second floor at 5,000, as long
Okay.
as the total space
Yeah.
so
is
canopy,
10,000.
total canopy space is 10,000.
Yeah.
So I could
So
do
I
like,
cannot, so I cannot at 10,000 square foot. I cannot go
Stack them on top of each other.
Can't
No,
stack.
you can't go like 10,000 on the first floor, 10,000 the
But-
second,
Right, you
10,000
can?
because then it'll be 30,000.
Yeah, but
but
basically,
could I go
so
like, let's say
so
if I had 10,000 square feet, could I go like 500 square feet, 500 square
Yes,
feet
you
to make
could.
like
yeah,
a high
yeah.
rise?
Yes, you could, as long as, of course, you have to meet whatever building
so just
codes
10,000
are.
square foot canopy.
What
Canopy
about
means
that?
that
What about that,
lights
Tam?
over your
500
plants.
square feet
Yeah.
and stack it like
Yes.
80
Yep.
stories high.
Okay.
Yeah.
That question's been asked of me a bunch of times. That's how I know. I double checked with the current version, or the most recent version of the rules and regs, because a lot of people ask me that question. So
Nice.
But do you guys, for on-site consumption, right, when these rules and regs are given over to the legislature, is that covered in there? Is there any allowance for on-site consumption, or is it just
No,
like grab it, you grab it and you go?
Yeah.
right
grab it
now,
and go.
no, yeah, that's the and actually the
'Cause
biggest
I thought
problem.
that I mean, you know, when you hear cannabis,
I'll tell
is
you what
legal,
I'll tell you what the issue is.
Yeah.
The Natasha Protection Act prevents smoking of anything indoors, except they managed to slip in some exceptions for tobacco, I think, in a cigar place or whatever. So bottom line is, we would have to amend the Natasha Protection Act and allow for like a smoking room of cannabis indoor,
lounge, like a
like a
cafe
lounge,
lounge.
which is something I'm considering doing. It's just something I got to work
But
on. And
it
again,
wouldn't be like you would be amending it so that you could have like a smoke room in a restaurant. These businesses.
No, it would be the
offer that
businesses just
strictly
catering to that.
cannabis.
Yeah. So in other words, so like that way a dispensary could potentially have a room that's dedicated
Try
just
it out, sample.
for smoking.
Right, yeah.
And then they could smoke in that room. So that's the way, but we would have to amend the
that's the
Natasha
issue.
protection.
So I know Marty's, you can buy cigar inside in one room, then you can
Go to another room.
Go to another room, just smoke
That's
right
because
outside.
they were granted an exemption based on, they amended the law just to allow an exemption for that
So how
kind
much
of
money did we
business.
pay for that? Did they
You gotta
okay,
give
never
them
mind.
bucks.
This is asking for a
We'd have
friend.
to- we'd have to
Asking
amend
for a
the
friend.
law, yeah.
Yeah, they're texting right now.
No, I agree with you. We should,
Yeah.
and that's something I want to work on and
Yeah.
get that
But what
amended.
about like edibles? So if the way the rules and regs are now, when they get to you guys,
Now I think technically you could consume an edible on, but I need to see the final version of the rules and regs once the AG is done. But last time I looked, the other version I looked, I think technically, I could be wrong, but I was pretty sure technically you could consume an edible because it's not
You're not
there's no
smoking.
smoke. Yeah,
Right. So that's a loophole.
sort of. Yeah.
There you go. And so we got to look into that, Will.
Please let us know.
Hey,
Okay, so-
well, and I mean, you know, the laws are complicated, and the way they work are very complicated. Maybe somebody much more clever than I can find out an existing workaround within the existing framework that exists that no one just thought of.
But the way the rules and regs are,
Because I mean, think about Eddie Bravo in California. He has
I have a workaround I've thought of in mind, is that so if you have private property, and let's say you have a big enough private property, you can consume outdoors on your private property, right? So you'd be able to consume outdoors on your private property, and that's where the workaround is, the private property. Or you'd be able to consume it in your private property. That's the workaround. You
Based
get what
on
I'm
the
saying?
language.
So,
I got you. Yeah.
I thought potentially of clubs, like members only clubs.
yeah, where you pay like $500.
that could possibly work too, but again, I
Like-
got to see the final version of it. You've seen the final version. What's in it? I think
I don't know.
I think.
Well, I mean, it's
I think
I
he smoked
love
too
it.
much. That's why I
Yeah.
can't remember.
It's
right now.
largely the same as what originally went in before. So I mean, everything else was just clarifications, references to subsection, whatever.
Right,
Just
yeah. Hit there
clean up languages. It was more like if you ever wrote a college paper, or a high school like term paper, you need commas here. It's the nitpicky stuff. So that's how come when we got it, there was a quick turnaround on it because it was just
Let's close here. Do you guys think that Guam could win a cannabis cup?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I gotta give credit
sure.
to the provision for home cultivation, because that has really
Yeah,
changed
that's
the
awesome.
game.
Didn't
of,
Guam win an award before for Guam Gold? Right, that was like an old school. I heard there was an old school strain that won some award.
Really?
In one of the cannabis cups
Nice.
called Guam Gold.
Oh, we got to Google
I'm gonna
that.
look that up.
Guam Gold guys, hit us up on
Yeah,
Instagram.
hit us up. Send us a sample.
Let us
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Not
if
for
it's true or
resale.
not. Let us
Yeah.
know if it's true or not.
But how big would that be though to be able to add Guam cannabis cup
So-
destination?
Just a small teaser. So I'm a small shareholder of High Times, and we're planning on bringing a cannabis cup here. But the only thing is they won't do the cup unless it's legal to sell. So soon, once we get it together, we want to do a cannabis cup at the garden, and it's going to be called the People's Choice. So basically, you buy a bag for $420. Inside that backpack, there comes it's a hat, T-shirt, magazine, calendar, and then all the growers they gotta give 1 pound, and that pound's gonna be broken down into jars to be put into all of it. So it'll be you grab the bag, you go and you sit down and you smoke and you do your own judging, So and it'll be pretty cool because we're just gonna number it out. We're not gonna say like this is Mariana's Grow or Champions or Guam Amsterdam or Songi Bros.
So you
It'll be
won't know
all
who
numbered.
you're
So
voting
you
for.
won't know who you're voting
Wow.
for. You won't know the strain. You're just gonna vote for number 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And so we're gonna we just as soon as we become legal and we can, that's the first thing we're gonna do.
Awesome.
One of the things I think that would help bring. Well, you're gonna bring High Times in, right? So they're like the world's biggest cannabis
Yeah,
platform for magazine or
Playboy weed.
That's a Playboy weed, and then we're gonna a lot of the neighboring countries are gonna want to come over, so you don't always have to go to California and spend $3,000, $10,000 right for a week or so. You can come to Guam, and So we're gonna bring a lot of the Asian market, you know, whether it's the hip hop market, the rap, the reggae market, the dancehall market, and also and of course, you know, the whole art industry. That
Yeah.
I mean,
The
we're
artsy
very
market.
big into
Yeah.
art over here. We
Right,
we
yeah.
done spraycations and help put together all like the, you know, the powwows. But I think that with art and cannabis, we can bring in again the best artists. So there's just so much, you know. I think, yeah, I think it's gonna be an awesome thing for Guam once it becomes legal and ready to pull the trigger.
Right on.
Sure.
Yep. And it's a whole different ballgame now, man. I remember you talking about reggae. I mean, when a lot of these reggae bands would come through Guam back in the day, it would be like, you get to like, hey, man, Soldier needs an ounce. Does anyone know where to get an ounce? So it's way different now. Definitely. And well, thank you guys for jumping in on this first
you for
episode
having
of the Chronicles. Again, thank you to Marianas Grown and our boys over at Songi Bros.
And my new sponsor, Good
Fantastic
Glass.
song,
Thank you so
bro.
much.
Fantastic.
They put the Chronic in the Chronicles for this episode. So Senator Ridgell,
Oh, thanks.
right on. Just to be clear, he did not inhale.
Nope.
He's been holding his breath the whole time.
I totally inhaled.
Hey, thanks for ending it on a high note, guys. Wil Parkinson,
Bye,
champ,
friends.
Melchor Manibusan.
Senator Clynt. That's it, man. Chronicles.